I arrived before the pastor, the way George always preferred to arrive anywhere, 10 minutes early, a quiet man letting the room settle before he asked anything of it. Even near the end, he kept time like a promise. Pills arranged by the clock, evening news at 6, slippers folded side by side before bed. Habit, he used to say, is how you respect tomorrow. Now he was lying in a polished box that didn't match the man at all. The chapel was too cold, the air pretending to be clean. 5 chairs were arranged like hopeful mouths waiting to be fed. No one sat in them. The flowers were bright enough to sting, white lilies and red roses trying to sell the idea that love had shown up. The scent pressed hard on the back of my throat, and I realized someone had ordered beauty to cover the fact of absence. The pastor's voice was thin and careful. He said George's name like it had been handed to him on a slip of paper outside the door. He spoke about legacy and rest and the mercy of endings. I listened because I was there, and because there are rituals you honor even when they're performed by strangers. I kept looking at the door. It never opened. Peter had texted that morning. "Sorry, Mom. Something came up. Can't make it." No punctuation, as if even the sentence couldn't stand up straight. 2 days earlier, Celia left a voicemail, sunny as a commercial. "Mom, you know I can't cancel my nail appointment. Tell Dad I'll visit next week." As if dead men wait for next week. I pictured George hearing that and pressing his lips together, the way he did when he chose not to be disappointed out loud. When the final amen landed like a paper cup on a table, the pastor left. I stayed. They lowered the casket. The dirt sounded heavy and honest. An old groundskeeper leaned on his spade and looked at me with the kind of mercy that doesn't try to help. The plaque would be temporary until the stone came. George Holloway, beloved husband, father, friend. The words were correct. The scene was not. Back home, the quiet had a spine. His chair still held his shape. The remote sat exactly where his thumb last warmed it. I poured a glass of the good wine, the kind we saved for guests, and remembered we hadn't had many guests lately. My phone lit up. Celia at brunch, faces tilted toward light, orange drinks crowned with bubbles, bottomless mimosas. Living our best lives. Peter on the 9th hole. New driver glinting. Killer swing. Perfect weather. Deals made. I stared until the screen blurred, then turned it face down. Our 40th anniversary photo watched me from the wall. George's arm around my shoulders, the rose bushes he planted burning red behind us. Outside now, those same bushes were a tangle of bare canes, winter already practicing. I lifted my glass and spoke to the empty room like it could answer. Tomorrow I'll open the folder. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. Morning found me at the kitchen table, the light thin and obedient as it slid across the wood. The coffee pot clicked itself off, leaving a scorched smell I didn't correct. I'd slept badly and briefly, the kind of sleep that folds you instead of holding you. The house sounded like it always did, plumbing clearing its throat, timbers settling. But I didn't trust familiarity anymore. Familiarity had let me miss what had been missing. In the hallway, the metal filing cabinet waited like a witness. George labeled the drawers in his steady block letters years ago: house, taxes, family. I pulled open the bottom one, and the rails complained, the small music of something faithful and tired. Inside, folders and envelopes and rubber bands numbered our history as if math could bless it. Paper doesn't love you, but it never forgets. At the very back sat the thin folder with the overstretched band. Estate. I'd tucked it there myself after our last appointment with Thomas. We'd gone line by line, 2 people believing fairness was the same as kindness. The will was neat, generous, written in ink that assumed gratitude. I carried the folder to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The pillow on his side still held the faintest breath of cedar and aftershave. Grief, I'm learning, is half scent. I opened the folder. There we were in legal language. The house, the cabin by the lake, the accounts scraped together from years of coupons and steady work. Peter and Celia's names repeated with calm authority. We had called it balance. We had called it love with a ledger. I traced a line with my finger, the way you do when you're pretending not to consider erasing it. My phone buzzed. Another story. Celia's brunch table now cluttered with plates licked clean, a caption about self-care and sunshine. A comment on Peter's golf post. Closing day, baby. The world did not pause to notice that I had buried a man. It did not look up from its feed. I closed the folder and placed my palm on top as if it had a pulse I needed to steady. Fairness can be a kind of laziness. We pretend equal and call it just, when what we mean is, I'm too tired to look at the truth. I was tired, but I wasn't done. On a yellow pad, I wrote in block letters like George used to, "Call Thomas Fields, 9 a.m." Then I added a second line I didn't want to see but needed to. Begin cutting out what no longer belongs. I stood and walked the house the way a nurse walks a late shift, eyes trained for what no one else will notice. The scuffed baseboard George promised to sand, the squeak in the hallway he never fixed because it told him when I was coming, the coat rack with the peg. Peter snapped at 13, and we left that way on purpose, a reminder that stories don't need to be perfect to be true. At the window, the bare rose canes had caught a thin white frost. The sun found them anyway. I breathed, and for the first time since the chapel, it felt like oxygen. Tomorrow, I start trimming where love stopped growing. The lawyer's office smelled like eucalyptus and dust, the kind of clean that tries to hide its age. Thomas Fields looked smaller behind the heavy oak desk, as if the years of other people's regrets had carved him down. He stood when he saw me. "May," he said softly, "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said, though what I meant was, he deserved witnesses. He gestured toward the leather chair across from him, the one that used to sigh under George's weight. "What can I do for you today?" "I need to change my will." His eyebrows rose, but he didn't look surprised. Grief brings a parade of paperwork, some of it legal, some emotional. "I want everything rewritten," I continued. "The house, the savings, the cabin, everything." He reached for a pen. "And your beneficiaries?" "I'm removing Peter and Celia." He looked up. "Both?" "Yes." He hesitated, the kind of pause that comes from decency, not doubt. "May, I've known you a long time. Are you sure this isn't reactionary?" "I buried my husband alone," I said. "They didn't even call. I'm not reacting. I'm remembering." His pen hovered, then landed on the page. "Then who inherits?" "Ethan." A small smile flickered at the edge of his mouth. "Your grandson, the quiet one." "He still comes by," I said. "Not for money, just to check on me." He nodded and began to write, a dance between ink and intent. I watched his hand move, thinking of all the hands that had taken from mine. We reviewed clauses, amendments, contingencies. He spoke in numbers. I heard in memories. Every asset was a story. Every change, a decision I should have made years ago. When the papers were ready, he slid them toward me. The pen felt heavy. My name came out clean. He looked up once more. "You're certain, May?" "I'm past certainty," I said. "I'm at peace." Outside, the afternoon had that post-storm light, all shine and shadow. The air smelled like wet pavement and beginnings. I stood on the steps of the office and thought about all the times I'd waited for fairness to show up uninvited. It never does. You have to write it yourself. I walked home, slower than usual, but not tired. When I reached the porch, I saw the mail tucked under the mat. 2 envelopes, 1 bill, 1 photo from Celia's latest girls' trip. Sun hats, champagne, the caption, "Family First." I dropped it straight into the trash. Inside, I opened the filing drawer labeled Family. 2 folders waited, Celia, Home and Lifestyle, Peter, Education and Business. I laid them flat on the table, page after page, receipt after receipt. Braces, tuition, rent, down payments, emergencies that always seem to repeat. Paper doesn't lie. It remembers every yes you were too kind to refuse. It was close to midnight when the phone lit up. Not a number I expected, but one I'd never ignore. "Grandma?" His voice cracked the dark open. "Ethan, I just heard," he said, breathless, as if guilt could run. "About Grandpa." "It's been 3 weeks," I said. "But you called. That's enough." "I didn't know. Mom didn't tell me." "Of course she didn't. Celia only shares what paints her holy." "I would have come," he said. "I promise." "I know. The house felt smaller with his voice in it, alive in a way the silence hadn't been for days. He was the only one who never used me like a safety net, maybe because he'd fallen enough to know the ground's language. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes, morning." He arrived early, wearing a thrifted jacket that didn't quite fit but carried its own honesty. His hug started cautious, then tightened into truth. He smelled like soap and rain. "I missed the funeral," he said. "I'll never forgive myself." "You weren't the one who missed it," I said. "You were kept from it." His eyes filled, but he didn't let them spill. "That's the Holloway way. We hold our water until it becomes proof." I gestured toward the folder on the table. "I changed the will." He froze. "Grandma, why?" "Because love should go where it's earned." He stared, then shook his head. "You don't have to do that for me." "I'm not doing it for you," I said. "I'm doing it because of you." We sat in the kitchen. The morning light slid through the curtains, painting him half gold, half question. He didn't argue. He didn't thank me either. He just nodded, the kind of nod that meant I'll be worthy of this. Before he left, he turned at the door. "Make pancakes Saturday, the way you used to?" "With the good syrup," I said. He smiled, and for a second, George was there too. In the angle of the boy's grin, in the way care disguised itself as humor. When the door closed, the silence didn't hurt. It rested. Then, tires on gravel, headlights flashing through the window, a shadow at the porch. Celia. She always arrives when peace does. Celia never knocked. She said doors were for strangers. Her SUV crunched over the gravel hard enough to shake the kitchen window. I'd just finished folding towels when she swept in, perfume first, sunglasses perched like a crown she didn't earn. "I've been calling," she said, tossing her bag onto the hall table. "I know. Why aren't you answering?" "I was busy." She poured herself a glass of water without asking, as if muscle memory excused disrespect. "Busy with what? Ethan said you're changing your will. That's not true, right?" "It is." The word hung between us like smoke. "You're removing us?" Her laugh came sharp and brittle. "After everything we've done for you?" I folded the last towel, stacked it neatly. "You didn't come to your father's funeral." "I had an appointment." "Yes," I said. "Your nails." Color rose in her face. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's accurate." She leaned against the counter, the posture of someone rehearsing control. "You're punishing us." "I'm resting," I said. "And I've chosen peace over pretense." "You can't just—" "I can," I said softly. "And I have." Her eyes darted to the table where the manila folder lay open. "He's a boy, Mom." "You're handing everything to a kid." "He's 19, I said, "and he showed up. You didn't." The silence after that felt colder than the air outside. She lifted her sunglasses, slid them back on. "I hope this makes you feel powerful. It makes me feel free." She slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled, but the sound didn't linger. It just ended. I poured tea and stood by the window. The roses out front trembled in the wind. In the reflection, I could see both of us, me still, her retreating. The echo of generations learning nothing from the mothers who warned them. She'd call later, maybe cry, maybe curse. But I'd already decided. Love that demands silence isn't love. It's debt. Peter knocked the same way he used to after curfew. Polite, rehearsed, guilty. When I opened the door, he stood there with Meredith at his shoulder. She smiled the way rich people apologize. All teeth, no remorse. They kept their coats on. People who plan to stay don't keep their coats on. "I heard from Celia," he said, "about the will. I imagine you did." Meredith stepped in, voice smooth. "May, grief clouds judgment. Maybe we can slow things down. We all want what's reasonable." "You didn't come to George's funeral," I said. "I had a dinner," she answered. "International." Peter cleared his throat. "Mom, please. I should have called. I just didn't know how." "You thought if you ignored it," I said, "it would hurt less." He nodded, eyes down. "Maybe." Meredith placed a manicured hand on his arm. "Ethan's too young for that kind of responsibility. He could be manipulated." I looked at her. "By whom?" She dropped her gaze. Peter shifted, uncomfortable. "So this is final?" "Yes," I said. You removed yourselves long before I signed anything. He frowned. You always said family comes first. I did, I said. And I still mean it. Ethan is family. Meredith's smile thinned. You'll regret this, May. Money changes people. I held her stare. So does neglect. They left without saying goodbye. The silence that followed was a relief, not a wound. I sat on the porch and watched their car disappear down the street, taillights cutting the dusk. A gust of wind passed through the empty yard, the last of the leaves twisting loose. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a mother failing her children. I felt like a woman finally raising herself. Banks all smell the same, lemon cleaner, ink, and caution. I carried the folder against my ribs like a second heartbeat and gave my name to the receptionist. She smiled with the kind of politeness that never needs remembering. A minute later, Richard Jansen appeared. Silver hair, impeccable suit, the posture of a man who never spills coffee. Mrs. Holloway, he said, offering a dry, careful hand. Let's get you settled. His office was glass on two sides, walnut on the others. One framed photo of a dog, honest eyes, muddy paws. George would have liked that. Richard opened my file, scanning the notes Thomas had sent. His eyebrows lifted, then smoothed. You're moving everything into an irrevocable trust in your grandson's name, he said, and removing prior beneficiaries. Yes. He leaned back. Would you like a co-trustee? No. If Ethan wants an advisor, he'll choose one. The decisions will be his. Richard nodded, professional face on. Disbursements restricted to education, housing, and healthcare until 30. After that, full access with protections. He paused. You understand this is difficult to undo. I'm not planning to undo it. He studied me then, as if looking for anger he could talk me out of. May I ask, are you doing this out of hurt? Out of clarity, I said. Hurt woke me. Clarity dressed me. He slid the pages across the desk. Initial here, signature there. The pen felt heavier than it had any right to. With each stroke, I felt the years of small excuses lift like dust in sunlight. No speeches, no revenge. Just a door closing with a soft, final latch. When we finished, Richard folded the documents with neat hands. You've built something sturdy, he said. George built sturdy, I said. I'm just correcting where we mistook equal for fair. Back outside, the air felt rinsed. Across the street, the cafe we used to visit had a new awning and music that thumped a little. I ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window where we once split lemon cake on Tuesdays. People moved past in sensible coats, lives clattering quietly. A woman pushed a stroller with one hand and a stray thought with the other. A man laughed into his phone, all teeth and weather. The city didn't know I had redrawn a map. It didn't need to. I traced a ring on the cup, steam fogging the glass for half a second before it vanished. That's what this felt like. Breath that stayed. Not grief's shallow panting, not denial's held lungs. Breathing with my name in it. On my way home, I walked slower, letting the cold climb my sleeves. The porch creaked when I stepped onto it, familiar as an old song. I set the folder on the hall table and laid my palm on it, a benediction, not a question. The house listened the way houses do when you tell the truth in them. They told me old age would be quiet. No one warned me how loud peace would sound once I stopped apologizing for keeping it. At 5 on the dot, Lorraine knocked. 3 soft taps and 1 decisive one, the rhythm of a woman who has outlived small talk. She's lived 2 doors down since 1972, keeps her hedges neat and her opinions neater. I opened the door, and she lifted a tin of lemon shortbread like a passport. I saw Peter's car yesterday, she said, stepping inside without waiting for permission she didn't need. Did he bring flowers or just excuses? Neither, I said, taking her coat. He brought a suit. She set the tin on the coffee table and lowered herself into George's old armchair as if she'd been practicing for this scene her whole life. Kettle on? I poured. Chamomile for her, black for me. The house had already adjusted to her presence. Rooms soften when someone comes in holding the truth. Well? She asked, eyes steady over the rim of her cup. It's done, I said. Trust filed, will amended, Ethan inherits. She let out a small breath that sounded like a door clicking open. About time. I didn't snap, I said. I just peeled away anything that wasn't love. People will call you cruel, she said, dropping a biscuit into her saucer crumbs like confetti. They won't mention that you carried grown bodies up the stairs of their own lives for years while they complained that the climb made them tired. I smiled without showing teeth. You make it sound almost noble. It's not noble, she said. It's expensive. She nodded toward the hallway. That cabinet of yours could testify. We ate in comfortable quiet, the kind that remembers things so you don't have to say them. She glanced out the window at the rose canes jutting like ribs. He planted those himself, didn't he? The first spring after the mortgage, I said. Said roses teach patience and pruning. What you keep, what you cut. He wasn't wrong. She set her cup down, the china making that thin, perfect sound. Do you regret it? I regret waiting this long, I said. I regret teaching them that my yes was their birthright. Lorraine leaned forward and took my hand. Small, warm, shockingly steady. They'll rewrite the story, May. They'll place you at the center of a narrative about money and madness. Let them. We know the quiet version. We were there. I thought of the funeral, 5 empty chairs, the hollow words floating like dust motes no one bothered to wipe. I thought of Ethan's letter with the pencil dents, of Meredith's eyes when truth finally sat down. Lorraine stood, slid into her coat and kissed the air next to my cheek. Call if you need me, she said. Or don't. Needing no one is also a skill. When the door closed, the room didn't feel emptier. It felt truer. I washed our cups and set them upside down to dry, listening to their small porcelain heartbeats on the towel. They'll call it cruelty because they only recognize love when it pays their bills. The letter came folded, handwritten, and creased from someone who doesn't trust machines with their heart. My name on the envelope, Grandma May. Each letter pressed too hard, as if Ethan wanted the words to leave a mark. I set it on the counter, made tea, and let the kettle whistle before I touched it. Some news deserves ceremony. Inside, the handwriting was neat, but young, the kind that leans forward because it still believes in things. Grandma, I wanted to write instead of text. I don't have fancy words, but I want you to know I love you. Thank you, not just for what you left me, but for what you taught me. I didn't know Grandpa was sick. Mom never said. I'm angry about that. I would have been there. I promise I would have. But I want you to know something. I'm going to take care of this house. I'm going to fix the porch, repaint the kitchen, plant something new every spring. You always said things grow where they're wanted. I want to be that kind of person. The letter ended with 3 words, underlined twice. I love you. I read it 3 times. Once with dry eyes, once with my hand over my heart, once with tears that didn't ask permission. Then I placed it on the mantel beside George's photo, the one from our 35th anniversary, his tie crooked, his smile proud and exhausted. See, I whispered, someone still knows how to love right. For years, I mistook usefulness for love, believing that if I stayed needed, I'd stay wanted. But Ethan's words weren't about needing. They were about seeing. He didn't ask for anything. He offered himself. That's the kind of inheritance you can't list in a ledger. I sat in George's chair and reread the line. You always said things grow where they're wanted. The truth of it bloomed slow and steady. I had been tending soil that no longer wanted to grow. Now, finally, something living had sprouted from the ashes. I left the letter on the mantel, a small flag of proof that not every seed fails. Then I walked the house, my fingertips tracing the grooves of old life, the nail marks on the doorframe from when Peter measured Ethan's height, the small dent on the table where Celia dropped her wedding ring during her first divorce. Every surface remembered, but not all memories deserved to stay. I stopped in the hallway, looking at the family photos. I didn't take them down. I just turned a few frames to face the wall. That was enough. Love doesn't always arrive early, but when it finally knocks, you learn the difference between apology and presence. When Meredith showed up alone, I almost didn't recognize her. No scarf, no jewelry, no perfume, just an apple pie from the grocery store, still warm in its cardboard box. I opened the door because curiosity, at my age, is stronger than caution. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said. I just wanted to talk. I let her in. She looked smaller without her armor, her voice softer without Peter's echo. She followed me to the kitchen, setting the pie on the counter like an offering. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I heard what you did, she began. About the trust, about Ethan. Yes. Her shoulders sagged. Peter's furious. He says you'll regret it. I don't, I said simply. She nodded, eyes glassy. Good, because you shouldn't. That surprised me. I waited. I wanted to tell you something, she said. You didn't fail them. They failed you. You carried that family long after they stopped noticing. And you're still carrying them, even now, worrying about how this looks. I didn't answer. The kettle began to hum, and I poured us both tea. Steam rose between us like a veil lifting. Why tell me this? I asked. She stared at her cup. Because I'm tired, and because George was kind to me when he didn't have to be. I never thanked him for that. Her eyes landed on the coat rack George built. One peg missing, the one Peter broke at 13. George never fixed it. Said, let it stay broken so we remember who we were. She smiled faintly. He was a good man. He was, I said quietly. She exhaled, stood, and picked up her purse. They'll say terrible things when they find out. Let them. You've earned your silence. At the door, she paused. Don't let them take your peace. They've already taken enough. When she left, the air didn't rush back in. It stayed still, as if honoring her exit. Forgiveness doesn't always mean a clean slate. Sometimes it just means you've stopped keeping score. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning, the kind of gray day that makes the world sound quieter. It was thin, official, and calm. Thomas Fields's letterhead printed neatly in the corner. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made tea and waited for the kettle to whistle. Paper deserves witnesses, not haste. When I finally tore the seal, the language inside was the opposite of dramatic. The revised will and trust have been filed. All prior designations revoked. Beneficiary, Ethan Holloway. The words were cool, efficient, but the meaning warmed my chest like a long exhale. I carried the envelope outside to the garden bench. The roses had surrendered to winter. Brown stems tangled like old arguments. George used to say they taught patience. You prune in faith, not in proof. I traced the ridges of the paper and whispered, it's done. The wind agreed by doing nothing. Back inside, the house waited. Polite, still, listening. I pulled the sewing machine from the closet. It had been asleep for years, but the sound of its wheel turning felt familiar, almost alive. I cut a strip of blue fabric, fed it through, and let my hands remember what routine feels like when it's your own. By afternoon, new curtains hung in the kitchen, crooked but mine. I made pancakes, not because I was hungry, but because the act of flipping something golden felt like declaring victory in small print. 2 plates. The good syrup. I didn't text Ethan. I didn't need to. Some things don't need invitations. At 9, there was a knock. Not urgent, just honest. He stood on the porch, cheeks pink from the cold, holding a bag of groceries he didn't need to bring. Thought you might want something fresh, he said. We made coffee, ate in companionable silence. He told me about his classes, about the part-time job at the hardware store. Then he said, I've been saving for tools. I want to fix the porch come spring. You don't need to spend your money on me. I'm not, he said. I'm spending it on us. That's when I understood. Inheritance wasn't about who got something. It was about who stayed to take care of it. When he left, I stood by the window. The blue curtains swayed gently, the light catching their uneven hems. It looked like the house was breathing again. They always warned me old age would be quiet. They never told me how full quiet could sound once it stopped being empty. We started with the railing because it leaned, like most things do after years of waiting to be fixed. Ethan measured twice, frowning at the old wood as if it had betrayed him. The air smelled like varnish and early spring. Grandpa would have done this sooner, he said. Grandpa always said things lean for a reason, I replied. We worked without hurry. He sanded, I held the toolbox. The afternoon stretched, no music, just the rhythm of tasks finding their place. At one point he asked, "What did Grandpa teach you most?" "That love isn't loud," I said, "and that people confuse gratitude with noise." He smiled. Sounds like him. The railing came together slowly, steadying under his hands. He worked like someone who'd been taught that care was a form of respect. I saw George in the way he double-checked every screw, in the way he didn't talk just to fill the space. When we finished, Ethan brushed sawdust off his jeans. "Looks better already." "It stands straighter than I do," I said. He laughed. "You stand fine." I made soup while he cleaned up. When we sat down, the silence between spoonfuls felt earned. He told me about a community project he'd been planning, building benches for people who had nowhere to sit. "I figure," he said, "if someone needs a rest, I can make a place for them." "You get that from your grandfather," I told him. After dinner, he checked the porch light, replaced the bulb without being asked. It glowed warm against the night, small proof that something was still working. When he left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt repaired. The railing, the light, even the silence, all of it finally holding its shape. I stood outside for a long time, hand on the wood he'd sanded smooth. The sky was turning violet, the air just cool enough to bite. Somewhere, George's voice moved through memory like a wind that knew where to go. "Make sure it lasts longer than you do." It would. Hope doesn't announce itself. It shows up in work boots and stays until the job is done. Night gathered the house the way a shawl gathers shoulders, soft, useful, a little worn at the edges. I turned off lights one by one until only the hallway lamp remained, a small moon above George's desk. The leather blotter was scuffed where his rings had worried it during difficult phone calls. The coffee ring stain glowed faintly, a fossil of mornings that refused to rush. I pulled a clean sheet of paper from the drawer and laid it down like a new floor. I have written letters my whole life, thank yous that apologized for the gift, condolence notes that folded language into comfort, checks tucked into envelopes with a smiley face in the memo line as if joy could be cashed. I had never written to the one person I kept misplacing, myself. The pen felt heavier than it looked. I uncapped it and waited, hearing the house breathe. A small tick from the vent, the old clock refusing to be modest, the hum of the refrigerator keeping vigil. Breath in, breath out. Words arrived like weather, quiet first, then sure. You tried longer than kindness required. You bent into shapes that did not have your name on them. You loaned your soft to people who mistook it for endless. You taught them your yes was free, then spent years paying interest. Still, you kept a roof steady, a garden brave, a marriage tender, a child's fever cool. You did not fail. You were faithful. To everyone but you. Now, be faithful to the woman who stayed. Choose calm without asking permission. Keep your door unlocked to love and locked to obligation. Give what is deserved, not demanded. Rest without apology. Forgive without returning the key. You are not cruel. You are not bitter. You are clear. I paused, surprised by the warmth in my throat. Not tears, not quite. Something inside me had loosened its fist. I dated the page. I signed my name, my whole name, the one I wore before, during, and after George. I folded the letter cleanly, placed it beside his last unfinished crossword. 14 down was still blank. End of one chapter, start of another. I didn't need to fill it. I was living the answer. In the bathroom mirror, I caught the face I've earned. Mapped with years, yes, but bright where resolve runs under the skin. I brushed my hair back and let the lamp find the good bones. Aging has been an editor, striking through what never mattered, keeping, in deliberate ink, what does. At the bedroom window, October had pressed its cool hand against the glass. I cracked it an inch. The air came in smelling like leaf and distance, reminding everything in the room that it could be both grounded and free. I slipped under the quilt and didn't reach for the sweater that still held his shape. Grief and love shared the bed without arguing. The hallway lamp clicked off. Dark settled the way truth does when you stop fighting it. Sleep took me carefully, like a nurse who knows where you bruise. I dreamt nothing I needed to forget. Clarity isn't thunder. It's the soft click of a lock you finally turn from the inside. I found the note by accident, the way you find last year's coins in a winter coat. I was clearing the fireplace, a small ritual of letting go, when my fingers slid under the kindling and touched paper. George's handwriting met me first, careful block letters, a little high on the line like optimism. Keep dancing, even if it's just in the kitchen. The world will try to make you forget who you are. Don't let it. Ash dusted my palms. I sat back on the rug and laughed the kind of laugh that breaks in the middle and repairs itself before it lands. Of course, he'd left me a map without telling me where it started. That was his way. Faith as instruction, courage disguised as suggestion. The record player waited in the corner, all bruise and beauty, a needle that always cleared its throat before doing its job. I lifted the arm, found the groove, and let an old song step into the room. I didn't dance well, knees telling their truth, breath measuring itself, but I danced honestly, barefoot on cool wood, arms loose, a woman occupying the space she cleaned for everyone else. The song skipped every third line. George used to say it had more character with the scratch. I agreed out loud. I turned once, slow, the way you do when you're not trying to prove you're young, but to prove you're here. The curtains, my crooked blue curtains, moved like someone nodding along. The house did its small chorus, a pipe tick, a vent sigh, the roof settling like a spine exhaling. When the song ended, I didn't play another. I stood in the quiet that isn't empty and let the room memorize me. Then I walked to the mantel and placed George's note beside Ethan's letter. 2 lighthouses, one behind me, one ahead. I wiped the ash from my hands and left a faint gray on my skirt, a mark I didn't mind wearing. I brewed tea, real leaves, real time. At the table, I wrote a list titled Spring. Paint the porch, plant herbs, basil, mint, thyme. Show Ethan where the water shutoff lives. Teach him pancake flip without tearing. Ask Lorraine for rose cuttings. Replace the missing button on the cardigan, or don't. Let the absence stay honest. The list didn't owe anyone else a thing. In the doorway between kitchen and living room, I stopped and looked at the space where I used to leave myself for later. There was no later here, only now, slow and sturdy. The phone lit up on the hall table and went dark again. I didn't move. Outside, the sky had the color of a bruise healing. The porch light glowed a small, faithful halo over newly straight rails. I leaned my shoulder to the frame and closed my eyes, then opened them, unwilling to miss any minute I had finally paid for in full. You don't become new. You become the woman who can carry what happened without putting herself down to lift it. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.